welcome to Super Aging. Tonight I'm talking a little bit about DNA and a few other things that are connected to that. So sometimes with DNA we kind of think about what's happened in our family and we create some excuses. So it might be something like, well, my family has a long history of heart disease, so I'm pretty sure that's what I'm going to get. Or maybe, there's something in my DNA that shows type 2 diabetes popping up. Or there could be stories that you've heard handed down through your family. So the question is DNA really important as to whether you're a super ager or not? So welcome to Super Aging. I'm Marianne from One Life to Flourish. I'm a wellness coach and an energetic healer. And I am passionate about helping people, particularly women, to experience a magical midlife that just sets them up to thrive as they age. So if you know someone who would find this topic really helpful, please invite them over using the arrow that's somewhere down below me. I can never find that. And we're also going live in a few different locations. So I am basically starting from My Time TV Live. So if you wish to comment or ask questions or whatever as we go, please make sure that you are joining me there. If not, I will attempt to catch up with you after if you've had any questions or comments. All right, so let's kind of go back into history a little bit, particularly if you're, maybe my age. You probably remember when they started to talk about this amazing thing that was going to happen when they finished mapping the human genome. It was going to be the key for us to understand and heal disease in an amazing way. That's what was thought, but that was not really what happened. Because what they discovered after doing all of the mapping was that there were very, very few diseases that were just like a single gene connection to that disease. So disease was actually found to be much more complicated than they thought going in, and what they'd expected wasn't actually what ended up happening. Now, let's kind of backtrack a little bit onto what DNA is doing. So DNA does instruct our cells how to behave. And that's where the scientists were coming from, going, yes, when we map everything, we can, I suppose, manipulate it, understand it, come up with ways to treat stuff. But that's not the full picture. So it's a little bit like going even further back in history, maybe, to when I was quite young in primary school or whatever. We were basically told that once we became an adult, our brain was going to be fixed. Now, we know that this is not the case, that our brain is actually very elastic and can change and evolve all through our life, which is an amazing thing. So it was a little bit like what happened with DNA. They actually ended up finding a fairly new science recently that goes over the top of DNA that's called epigenetics. Now, this shows that what happens inside the cells, which is where your DNA is at and your genes are, that doesn't actually determine everything that's going to happen. So it's not all about what's happening inside. So epigenetics showed that basically our genes interact with the entire environment. So it's not just the cell that they're in, it's everything that's going on around it. So this environment determines which genes are turned on or off and determines how the cell behaves from any moment to any other moment. All right, so if we've got a good environment around the cell, it's going to flourish, it's going to grow, it might produce lots of energy, it will actually live longer, and it will actually support healing. If it's in the wrong environment, then it's going to actually become inflamed, diseased, and potentially destructive to other cells around it. So quite a contrast between what can actually happen. So, the epigenetics kind of gave us, which is the good news, gave us understanding that just like with our brains not being fixed, so we can actually make adjustments and so on over our life, so we can actually make adjustments to what's happening in our body with our health. We don't have to be locked in just because our DNA shows something in particular, because the epigenetics has a greater impact, I suppose. So basically, the good news is that we can be in control of this environment that's set up around ourselves and in ourselves. And it can be, governed by our behavior. So I suppose physical kinds of things. So like how we diet, how we exercise, what our sleep's like, all kinds of things that can help us to have a positive physical well-being. It can also be impacted by sort of like our mental attitudes, that kind of thing. So how well we're managing stress in our life, if we're having a positive or a negative mindset, for example, or too much one way or the other, probably too much in the negative way. Positive is usually fairly good. If we're practicing gratitude, if we're doing meditation, all of those kinds of things, we can actually build up emotional well-being. That's going to give us a nice positive environment for ourselves. And there's also sort of aspects of how we're connecting to each other. So in personal connections, so like our personal relationships, our friendships, and how we take part in our community are all part of building up this really amazing environment where our cells can flourish, if we're making sure that what we're doing is going to build that up, of course, because we've got a choice, haven't we? We can choose how we're going to live out our life. What choices we make, we just need to know are going to have an impact on more than just, the very immediate physical things that we can see. It can go much, much deeper. So having said all of that, is there a role for DNA in the whole super aging idea? So it's a little bit of a yes and no, but let's look at the yes side of it. So, and I mean, this is what I've done. So I had my DNA done so I could try and find some people related to me when I was doing family history research, but I could also use that DNA to go and find out what susceptibilities, I suppose, I have to different kinds of things. So you can actually use your DNA to get some of that idea, particularly if you don't know, your full, I suppose, history going back. So you can actually get a bit of information that way. And then that information can be used by people with a bit of knowledge around that. So like a genetic nutritionist can actually have a look at your DNA and go, yeah, okay, so this shows, that you need to be perhaps changing this part of your diet. It might show that you need to do this with your sleep. So basically they can give you some suggestions on how to change your behavior so that you can actually have the greatest impact on that environment around and in the cell to turn the genes off and on and create the greatest chance of super aging, if that makes sense. So kind of like use your DNA to get the best information you can and make the best changes for you, because there's all the general advice that we kind of know and hear about quite a bit, but this can be much more specific and tailored. All right, so what can we take away from this? So the number one thing is, and this is the one that I always like, we have much more control over our future than we're often given the impression of, by family, by media, whatever. Okay? Always remember that you have the choice in how you live your life. We can use excuses, and a lot of these things around, DNA and family history, ultimately they're just excuses that we can justify some of the choices that we make. Let me be blunt with that. So aging well is about making choices that are going to bring you amazing benefits, and they're kind of called the multidimensional benefits. So, for example, if you are, doing exercise, so active movement, this has a benefit at the macro level. So you're getting stronger muscles, your cardiovascular system is working better, but it also filters right down to the cellular level and even deeper than that. So this is where we get into some of the quantum levels of where things are working, which is pretty cool, because we are amazingly complex beings, interconnected in amazing ways. And all we need to do is make a few tweaks in how we're living our life, and we can reap amazing benefits. So that's my takeaway. Tweak what you're doing. Don't necessarily have to know about your DNA. Just think about what's going to be, the most enjoyable ways for you to actually increase your feelings of healthiness and your feelings of well-being. If you're feeling really quite healthy and positive most of the time, then you're on the way to building that environment for your genes to thrive in. And that's what it's a great idea to aim towards. Okay, so having said all of that, I at the moment am looking for committed women who are currently at midlife, who would like to join my case study program at a truly incredible entry-level price. So if that sounds interesting to you, then put a yes into the comments and I will send you some details. Now, also, if some of the things that I've talked about tonight around how we can set up this great environment have interested you, on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m, I'm going to be going live on One Life to Flourish, talking about self-healing, because this is essentially where this whole idea of epigenetics can head, plus a few other bits there. So you're welcome to come along and join me if you are interested in how all of that works. Otherwise, please join me next Monday night when we're going to talk a little bit more around how we can age really well, how we can set ourselves up to be living the best life possible now, but also into the future. So I hope you have a really great week. Start to think about and question how healthy and, happy you're feeling at the moment. And of course, always reach out if you feel like you could use some extra support in that way. So I'm going to say good night for now. Thank you for joining me. Bye.